Well, hi, everybody. It's David George Brooke, that gratitude guy. Today with Suzanne Taylor King, the entrepreneur's secret weapon. And our subject for today is zeroing in on your perfect customer. How do you figure out who your perfect customer is? But before we get to that, let me just say good morning to STK, as I call her. STK, good morning. Welcome to our conversation.
Hello, hello. How are you today?
I am doing fine. It's just looking forward to these Friday conversations about the many different subjects we have. So as I like to say, ladies go first. Let me ask you, zeroing in on your perfect customer to achieve success. Give me some initial thoughts on that for you.
I think normally people resist this work a little bit when they're first starting out. Especially in the online space. They feel like, "Oh, I want to help everybody. I want to speak to everybody because I don't want to turn a potential client away." And I'm one of those people. I resisted, you know, really deciding who that person was, and because I was fearful of, turning away a client. And I quickly realized that by speaking to everyone, you're really speaking to no one. So nobody knows who the message is for. So I think that's the number one, is that to really grasp this idea that you have to really know who you're talking to, whether you're meeting one-on-one with somebody, or you're at a networking event, or you're writing content for social media. If it doesn't speak to that person, you're just missing an opportunity to really connect with somebody.
Yeah, well said. And I think for some reason, when I thought of the subject for today or the title and what we're going to talk about, zeroing in on your perfect customer, and I get on this subject quite a bit, but it reminded me a lot of how so many people don't listen. How
Mm,
are you going to know who your perfect customer is if you don't listen? And as recently as yesterday, I was telling somebody about, we're in the sales world and we're all selling sales world and we're all selling something and pitching things and whatever word you want to use. And I was explaining to somebody, they said, well, I think I'm a good listener. And I said, well, here's my newest thought about this. I think a good listener listens very carefully, does not interrupt. I've had many people interrupt. Sorry to interrupt. Well, then don't interrupt. If you say sorry to interrupt when you do it, let me finish type of thing. They listen. They don't interrupt. They listen, as Stephen Covey said, to understand, not to respond. And then when the person's done, they ask a question based on the information that's been said. And then
mhm.
after the customer or your client, whatever you want to call it, answers the question, you ask another, and I think this is the key. You ask another question based on their answer. And
Yeah.
and we know, whether it's looking for the perfect customer or whoever, people just do this all the time when you're talking, uh-huh, 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 uh-huh. Okay, what I wanted to tell you is, and they haven't heard a word that you said. And so I
Mhm.
think for some, I mean, the best salespeople that I've been around have asked me tons of questions and listen and ask follow-up questions. And then they decide I've become their perfect customer because they know me. And yet there's people all the time that sell and they just keep selling, selling, selling and never hear anything you say. And then they wonder why they don't have more clients or more customers. I think it's
Mhm.
interesting.
Yeah, I see it still a lot. I was thinking that it would have changed by now, but still it constant messages or emails or conversations that are so one-sided. So, just hell bent on making me a client rather than finding out if I actually need what you offer, or am I the person you want to work with?
Yeah.
And I think that's where moving forward as a coach, a consultant, any kind of service or product provider, I think that's how you can really differentiate yourself, in this artificial AI automated world, by really listening and really being curious and asking good questions. Well, let me ask you this, David. What you just said, you know, based on listening, how did you learn that listening was really going to get you closer to what you wanted in your career? How
Yeah.
did that come up for you?
Exactly. Exactly. And I would think I would ask you to give me an example when you and I first met, and you and I are both coaches and we have different things to overlap, but also things that are our own specialties. But when you're talking to a prospective client, coaching client, what have you, what's some of, not so much that you can say the questions that you ask, but maybe more the flavor of those questions and how you get that information to find out if they are in
Mm.
fact your perfect customer.
Great question, by the way. Um, I don't typically prepare in advance except for what made you reach out to me type questions. What attracted you to what I do, or what drove you to book a call with me today? Most of the time, my relationships aren't starting prospect to coach. They're typically starting peer to peer. And so the questions are a little different. They're not geared towards working with me. They're just geared towards my entrepreneurial curiosity. What made you get started in business? What do you love the most about what you do? What do you dislike about what you do? If you could change that, what would that look like? Oh, I don't know. And then that leads me down a direction of finding more about them as a person and a business. And if I can be of value, not selling myself, but if I could share something of value. I hopped on with a connection earlier today to show him how to install Chat GPT plugins. I mean, it was just 5 minutes. Hop in my Zoom room. I'll show you how to do it. I don't want to type out how to do it. Just hop in and I'll show you.
Right.
And so that 5 minutes of time was just a little value thing I provided to somebody in my network. So I think most of the time I'm meeting people that way, value to value, like what can we do for each other? How can we support each other? And then the client questions are totally different.
Mhm. Mhm. And I think one of the things, I've said this before, I don't know if I said it on our weekly conversation, but I just remember very, very clearly with you and several other people, when you really have achieved success in terms of, I don't necessarily care for the word pitch, but you're talking to somebody about working together as a client coach relationship or coach client relationship or what have you, is that when you provided enough value, and we hear this a lot about provide massive value and give away as much good stuff as you can, because it's not the information that they're going to need help with, it's the implementation. And I do understand that. But I sort of love it. And I remember with you, when the person then says, well, how can we work together? Instead of you say, well, can I tell you more about my program? I have 3 steps to the program. This is how much it costs. This is how often we meet. So, and none of that. It's just that when you've given enough good information, I think it's really cool. And if you don't think that is your perfect customer, I don't know who it would be when they're saying, how can we work with you? But I imagine you've had that experience quite a bit, I would think.
I strive for that experience. I mean, I over deliver, astonish with value, um, because I love to do it, but mainly because I don't like pitching my services. I don't enjoy, or I won't overcome objections. Like if you have an objection to working with me, I'm not arguing with you. That's
Right.
no.
Right.
Um, I want somebody to want to work with me because one, it's a more motivated person, they're more fun to work with, and they're more inspiring. Um, the worst thing as a coach, no matter what kind of coach you are, is to have to feel like you're dragging somebody along. That's
Mhm.
it's horrendous.
Yeah.
Um, so I think by kind of filtering for the person who is like, wow, how do I work with you? And there's some nuance to getting that to happen a little bit more often, but it's so much more rewarding for me as a coach to have somebody who's actually interested.
Yeah. There was a famous coach that said, people come up to him all the time and say, thanks to you, I've transformed my life, changed my life, whatever it might have been.
Mhm.
And he was reportedly said to them, Well, thank you. I appreciate that. But you're the one that did the work. I told you, and I use the example, I told him to do the push-ups, but he or she did the push-ups.
Yeah.
And I find it interesting for some reason when you said something that made me think of this, where I'll take your money and I'm happy to get the contract, the information, the money, the bank card information, whatever it might be. But if you don't do the work,
Hmm.
it's not going to help me. And I'm
Yeah.
not gonna have a hollow victory like that. It's just kind of like, well, did you do your assignments? No, I was really busy. Well, then clearly you're not committed. And so
Yeah.
ultimately you want somebody, and that's where I think those questions really come in. You want somebody that is going to sign up and is going to be a coach and be a good client, but you want them to succeed, not to
Mhm.
mention the success that they have, but the referrals that they'll give you, the testimonials, all that kind of thing. And I'm sure, haven't you had clients in the past that you took their money and so forth, but then you signed them up, but then they just sort of failed or didn't do very well?
Of course. Of course. I only had to fire one, um, probably in the last 10 years. And I knew I shouldn't have taken her on as a client. And 3 weeks in, I think I had asked her to do 5 or 6 things, small things, and she hadn't done any of them. And I just thought, do you really want to do this business? Because it's not seeming like you do. And her answer was so profound to me. She said, "Well, those things make me uncomfortable. I can't do them." And I said, "Isn't that why you hired me?" "Oh, well, yeah, I guess." And I said, "So you hired me to show you the way to do things. You knew it was going to be uncomfortable. You paid for the accountability factor, but you're still not doing the work." And sometimes that's just so you can blame it on somebody else. I don't
Sure.
want any parts of that.
You know, questions are, that raises a good point. Questions are so powerful. I
Yes.
did about 75 or 80 podcasts over about a year and a half, and it just didn't work out as well as it would have liked. It was just difficult to monetize, and there's a million podcasts now. But I always save the last question, and I just love it when somebody says, well, that's a good question, because when you really put some thought into it, and
Yeah.
it's a open-ended question, so it can't be answered yes or no, of course. And so I would always ask people at the end, okay, well, thank you for being on the podcast. It's been great having you as a guest. I have one last question for you. Whatever your age is right now, what do you know at this age that you would have liked to know at 18 that would have helped you?
Mm, mm.
And it's just great. I mean, there's some
Yeah.
very, I'd have to go back and listen to some of the podcasts too, but some very thoughtful answers that made a lot of sense. I mean, then there was some sort of tongue in cheek. I would have bought Microsoft back when I was younger, things like that and so forth. But have
Well,
you?
I took a 2-hour class yesterday
Mhm,
with one of my mastermind groups that I'm in,
mhm.
and it was all on designing questions.
Oh, wow.
A whole entire 2 hours designing questions. And here, one of the things I wrote down for today was that there's 4 question categories: purpose questions, past questions like high point, success stories, that kind of thing; present stories, appreciation, active listening questions, like, "Oh, tell me about your kids," right? That's, you actually have to pay attention when you're asking those questions. And then possibility questions.
Mm,
And I love the possibility questions. That's totally where I love to play in that space with people of, well, what's possible if we do this work together?
that's
Oh,
great. I love that.
oh, I don't know. What's possible if we ask better questions of other people? I don't know. I mean, think about that.
Yeah, that's really good. Years ago, I took a seminar that is pretty well known national group, and you'd think I'd remember a lot of it, but I don't really remember which. But I just remember this. Speaking of what the word you just used, and I've remembered this to this day. And maybe that was worth the whole price of admission. But
Hmm.
they said expectations unfulfilled equals disappointment, which
Yeah.
is true. possibilities unfulfilled equals more possibilities. And I just thought that was so good, because what you and I might have even talked about it offline today. Where do we get in trouble when we have artificially higher expectations that we don't meet? And now we're all disappointed, and we set the bar so high, or we're not in the right mood that day, or whatever it might be. So but it comes back to those things in the questions, and how you ask those questions. And sometimes yourself. I love that: purpose, past, present, and possibility questions. That's really good. And so anything more on that from yesterday, that they kind of how to
Oh,
structure
I can share the handout with you. Yeah, there was a three-step process in designing questions for like an event or a call or a workshop. You know how I always ask questions at the beginning of an event or workshop. Why is it important for you to be here today?
Right.
What made you want to join this group today? Or, something along those lines. And I loved the idea of connecting to the purpose of the call. We talked a little bit about that before you hit record today. Um, what is the purpose of you inviting me
Yeah.
today? And there's no harm in asking that. And
Right.
I think a lot of times, I don't ask, oh, well, why are you inviting me? Or why are you asking me that? Or how do you see me contributing to your community or your group or this workshop? And I think when we're talking with, you know, being able to dial into your ideal client and talk to that single person in the room, I used to have this thought: if I went to a networking event and there was 40 or 50 people there, that I needed to have conversations with all 40 or 50 of those people. And years ago, I decided every networking event I go to, or workshop or class, one person, one person. So even in this 2-hour long mastermind group about designing questions yesterday, there was 12 people there, and I picked one person, and I thought I want to have a get to know you call with him because of something he shared.
Yeah.
And I don't think enough people really think about their life and their business in that way, to really be able to dial in on, I mean, if your ideal client is sitting here in front of you, do you know it or
Yeah.
not?
Right.
Well, that's your job to go out there in the world and figure that out,
Mhm.
and not expect to have them reaching out to you. You need to figure it out first.
Well, when we talk about the perfect customer, and it really is kind of deconstructing that perfect customer to see what their needs are, or what their strengths are, their opportunities, whatever you want to call it, but what those are. And again, back to questions. That's why it's really timely that you would have that seminar, webinar, whatever it was yesterday. I wrote down, what is the purpose of this call today? Because you've said that before in the various things that I've listened to you facilitate and so forth. Another one, and I just finished saying, you don't like to use the word expectation. What's your expectation? Because it does equal disappointment, as that old saying went. But what
Yeah.
about something like, what kind of outcome would look like a home run to you?
Mm.
So you get a flavor of what they're looking for, because sometimes I would imagine, well, you mentioned that one customer of yours or client of yours, is maybe there wasn't clarity on the outcome.
Hmm.
Therefore, well, I was disappointed in David, I was disappointed in STK or whatever. And well, maybe it wasn't made clear in the beginning what outcome we can, not there I go again, would expect, but what kind of outcome could come out of this, and making
Well,
be
there's
clear.
different definitions for everything too. So um, if I say to somebody, well, I'm going to help you increase your impact and build your authority. Well, that means one thing to me.
Right.
But if I don't explain what that means, and somebody hires me to build their impact and authority, and they have a different definition of that, well, there's going to be a problem.
Yeah. Yeah. So this might seem like an obvious question, maybe, but I'd still love to have you articulate what does, I'll say that 3 times,
What?
what,
Wiki.
um, what does the perfect or the ideal client look like for you in terms of how they behave, how they respond, how they communicate? Because I'm sure you've had ones you think, man, if I had every client like this, I'd be in Fat City forever. Not only whether it's making money, but just the knowing you're helping people at such a high degree. What does that perfect client look like to you?
Well, besides physically, a lot of them tend to look the same, which is really interesting. That's a whole nother conversation. I think action takers. Uh, I love fearless people who are open to new ideas, new ways of doing things, new ways of being. That's exciting to me.
Mm.
That's inspiring to me. Somebody who's afraid, oh, that's
Oh, yeah,
doesn't fly well with
yeah,
me.
yeah,
So if I have to remind you more than 3 or 4 times of our plan, I want somebody who is on it, who's excited about it, who's ready to go.
yeah,
And I think problem wise, I'm pretty clear on the problems I solve. So as soon as I hear one of those, I'm pretty clear. And then I would say demographic wise, I might like working with men more than women, unless the woman is an action taker and fearless and um isn't going to come to me with excuses.
right. Action
And
taker is that's such a good
action takers.
That's such a good term. And I was thinking as you said that, another one that's just big for me, and you and I have talked about this more than I wish we'd have to talk about it, is how is their follow through? Oh my
Mhm.
Lord. I just, the amount of people that you can use the word ghosting, that never get back to you, that they so it went to my spam folder. I didn't get this. I didn't see it. I didn't get it, whatever. Somebody once said to me once, uh, the only excuse is a poor one. And
Yeah.
it's kind of true. And they have a million excuses and things. But it's just so, again, we're talking about you're getting to your best client, your best customer. It's just, what did that lady once say to me? It's a beautiful thing. It's just a beautiful thing when it all works in harmony and they're working hard and following through and getting the results and all that kind of thing. But it's really kind of unfortunate because to me, I have this conversation with people on a fairly regular basis about the lack of follow through, again, the ghosting, the not people not getting back to you. And
Hmm.
it's just, I use the example, and this is not particularly pertinent, but a little bit. But as I've said, if you have food for enough people for your party for 50 people, you better invite 150 people if you want 50 people to show up. And I tell you, I don't remember that growing up. I mean,
No, I don't. I
I
don't
think it
either.
was
And
like you wanted 50 people, you invite 70
yeah,
people or something like that.
yeah. Yeah, I think that's the nature of the online space with how many invitations we receive via email, via notification. Um and is that diluting our message,
Right.
for what we do? Maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe it is. Because people are so bombarded. But the thing I notice about, and this goes across the board, men and women, but most women who have children, who are working and have children, either they have a partner or they don't have a partner, doesn't matter, have more on their plate with logistics. Oh, I have to be here. I have to do this. I have to be here. And because they're doing for children, doing for pets, doing for their business, doing for the house. And I just notice that the more logistics somebody has to deal with, dentist appointment, doctor's appointment, grocery shopping, laundry, and a business, that the more important it is for them to be laser focused
Yeah.
and less distracted. But
Yeah.
a lot of times they're not willing to do that.
Yeah.
And so that maybe that's why, I like working with men better because secretly I think they have less on their plate.
It's interesting though. I remember I used to get into an argument with people. I'm a stickler about being on time, and I make an
Mhm.
appointment. I'm on time. You mentioned the dentist, and you were in the dental world for a long time. And I don't need the reminder call the day before. I'll be there.
Mm-mm.
I said I'd be there at 8 o'clock, so I get there at 7:45, and the whole thing. But it was interesting how with people that can't be on time, don't follow through, don't send an email back, don't send a text. In this world we live in with all these devices, and a text everybody gets immediately. It's like the email goes into a long queue and there's all sorts of things, but a text. So I would expect to get back a text something the same day, maybe within a few hours, the same day as the next, but email, maybe 2 or 3 days. Nobody uses the phones much anymore, or voicemail or whatever. But I always would get into this argument about people. I'd say, when you didn't get back to me, it clearly wasn't important enough to you. And they go,
Mhm.
no, no, no. See, here's what happened. See, I had a flat tire, I had to get gas, I was doing this, there was a red light. And I go, no, 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 no. Because if I had $10,000 for you in cash that I owed you and said, be here at 3 o'clock, you would be here at 3 o'clock. There would be no problem getting here. And
Yep.
so trying to separate the wheat from the chaff, or whatever you want to call it, to really get to the people that are committed is part of the battle, if you will, if that's the right word, to getting to the perfect client.
Yeah, I mean, I think you have to be able to communicate, you know, through your content, through your conversations, those things that you are looking for. Let's take a health coach, for example. If they're looking to meet people who want to lose weight, it's not hard to go out there in the marketplace and visually find your client, right? You could look around and pick people who visually have 20, 30, 50, 100 extra pounds on them, make friends, get in conversation. It's not hard to find people who need to lose weight. Who
Exactly.
want to lose weight, totally different story.
True.
Who are ready to take action to lose the weight, again, totally different communication. So you have to know where your communication is in the customer awareness journey.
Right.
Are they just overweight and they don't care? Well, your communication is going to mean nothing.
Right.
Are they overweight and know they need to do something and are actively looking for a solution? Well, that's the perfect time to meet them. It's the
Yeah.
perfect time for your content to resonate with them. Now, if they're ready to purchase, that's where everybody wants to market.
Right.
Think about it. Everybody wants their marketing, emails, content, talks, workshops to speak to the person who is ready to buy.
Right. It's so true. Hearing you say that triggers a lot of our conversations, which I think maybe why people might find them interesting from time to time, maybe a lot of the time, but is just revelations and thoughts about things. And I've said to myself many times, in my next life, it's a little late now, whether I like to admit it or not, but in my next life, I want to be a psychologist, because I
Mm.
find people are fascinating. And
Mhm.
and Suzanne, say that again about want to lose weight versus will lose weight. What was the comparison you made there?
People who need to lose weight and
Need to lose weight.
they don't even, it's not even on their radar to start looking
Yeah,
for somebody to help them or a solution.
right. And
Then
so,
they're the
go
ones who know they need to lose weight. They're actively looking for a solution.
ahead. Correct.
They might not be ready to buy anything yet. They're just looking. They're
Correct.
just, is it a diet? Is it exercise? Is it supplements? Whatever.
And that's why I love psychology so much, as I mentioned. And
Yeah.
now I'm thinking, I grabbed the gratitude journal, shameless plug, that gratitude
Oh, I
guys,
love
free
Shameless.
gratitude journal. Link to Amazon is in the description on YouTube, which you can see if you would like to buy one. But the reason I brought this up is not so much to sell gratitude journals, but just the human psychology. It made me think, when you talk about the weight, made me think of it. So these journals they've got a template in it, and so you can kind of fill it out and everything, but it's not like it's some book where there's a bunch of text and everything, and you fill out the information and the date and the day and your daily number, the quotes on there, what you're grateful for, what's the highlight of your day, your gratitude for tomorrow, and so forth. But they sell for $20. And
Mhm.
if you think about what this costs Amazon to make and what I should retail it for. Realistically, I should probably retail it for $10. But I
Mhm.
noticed when I changed the price from $10 to $20, more
Mhm.
people bought it
Yeah.
and more people wrote in it. And I always like, well, how are you doing in the gratitude journal? Oh yeah, I do. I don't, and this is with my coaching clients. Yeah, I'm pretty, somewhat. I mean, like I never miss a day. I mean, I know you shouldn't say never, you never shoot absolutes, but I never miss a day. And then occasionally when I've missed a day, I go back and write it as if it was yesterday. So I want every single day filled out. The
Mhm.
highlight on Saturday from the day before so often is my talk with STK, of course. So shameless plug for STK. But I just found it interesting and I thought, I'm going to change the world. So I'm going to give them away. So when I gave them away, they didn't write in them.
Yeah.
And I'd say, well, how's that work? Oh, yeah, honey, where's that journal he gave us? And I just
Yep.
go, you write in every day. But then when they pay $20, they write in it every day.
Yeah.
And so I think that's why I like the psychology piece. And we're trying to psychoanalyze, if that's the right word, for people that could be our client or be our best client or our best prospect or whatever. And people are just such complex individuals. And
Yeah.
that's why I like your comment earlier about the questions that you ask and this construction of questions. And even that thing too, what kind of outcome would look like a home run to you to really get to the right prospect? Because that's kind of what we're
Yeah.
talking about today.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's our job to, whether we're posting or doing videos or connecting with people one-on-one, whether you're speaking to one or 100, it's important through what you're saying to get people to filter themselves because you don't want to spend your whole entire business filtering people.
Right.
So if you talk a certain way, people filter themselves. And that could look like you have a free discovery call, but on that page it says that your coaching is a 5-figure investment.
Hmm.
Well, there's going to be many people who will skip scheduling a call then
Right. Right.
because, oh, this coach is not for me. I thought it was going to be $35 an hour. I've had calls like that, and that's why I put my pricing on my website. I had somebody book a call. She was a lovely, lovely business owner. I thought she was going to be a perfect client for me. We had numerous conversations about her becoming a client. I had no clue that in her mind, she thought coaching was not going to be more than $65 an hour.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And I said, "Oh, what were," when I gave her my price and she said, "Oh, I had no idea." And I said, "Well, what were you expecting to pay, for a 3-month coaching package?" Well, I wanted about 12 sessions, so I thought $65 a session. And I said, "Well, one, I don't do it by the session or by the hour. It's by the transformation provided.
Word.
So, what is the solution to your problem worth?" And when I think about gratitude and, your coaching and what it does for people, how it can change lives and change perspectives. And so, does does that mean you sell gratitude coaching or coaching with David at $65 an hour? No. You sell based on the outcome. This can change the trajectory of your whole entire life.
Right.
So of course, it's a bigger investment than, buying just a gratitude journal.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. And I almost hesitate to say this. You have to be selective about who you could go back and use when you and I were growing up and who you dated. And you dated a lot of boys, I dated a lot of girls or whatever. And then you decided which was the one that it might work. It's a selection process. And
Mhm.
I've always, as I look out at Lake Washington, I always use the example of if you put 12 fishing poles in the water, you got a better chance catching a fish than one. But to find somebody that's really committed and understands, and what made me think of this when you said $65 an hour, that understands this is not Walmart or Kmart or whatever the company is, 7-Eleven. This is a high-end deal, and you're going to get high-end results with a high-end coach, and the price that would be commensurate with that. Is the famous line goes, if somebody said they have a Ferrari for you and it's $1,000, it was stolen, or there's something wrong with it, or it's a fake, or
Right.
you would never take it.
Right.
So to me, just in this experience I've had, I just have managed a lot of people at these retail outlets and so forth. And gosh, as I said, I almost hesitate to say it, but this is why you got to be so intentional about who you connect with and who you
Yeah.
coach, and you want the results. 9 out of 10, not very inspiring, just
Yeah.
not very motivated. And whether it's to be a coach or think I'm going to pay $65 an hour to get, $500 an hour results, is just not the case. And I've had employees over all the years, that sounds like a lot of work. Well, that's what this is called. This is work. You do this work and then I pay you money. And then you use your money to pay your rent and buy your food or whatever. That's kind of how it works. And,
Yeah.
it's just, again, I'm almost hesitant as I'm kind of going through this in my mind to say it, but I've been so disappointed in big chunks of people, the majority of people that just aren't very motivated. So you already take that talent pool, and then you take that, and then you get down to the person that knows that coaching would help them. And this is all the way coming back, and we'll wrap up in about 5 minutes or so. It's coming all the way back to finding the perfect prospect, and how do you get it? So it's a huge, huge elimination process. You just check, and it gets down finally to
You
the
have to be willing to do that. You have to be willing to say, I'm going to talk to 100 people.
yes,
I'm going to meet 100 people. And out of those 100, there might be 20 who need the transformation
right,
that I provide.
yep,
And out of those 20, there's probably 2 that are ready to buy right now.
good. I think those are
And
numbers.
it's our job to create those clients, not
Right.
sell to them. So by giving them the opportunity to have conversation with us, to interact with us, to see the results we've had with other people, or maybe it's helping them a small amount towards a small goal, then we're actually creating the clients out of the people that we meet,
Right.
instead of selling to someone, or, you know, forcing the situation. You're creating the opportunity for somebody to say, "Oh, wow, Sue, that was amazing, the 5 minutes you spent on Zoom with me today, showing me how to effectively use Chat GPT. Do you use this in your business all the time?" Why, yes, yes, I do. And do you show your clients how to do things? Yes, yes, I do. Can I share a video training I did a couple months ago? Yeah, that would be amazing. So now he's going to watch this video training from me, and I'm going to reach out to him in 3 or 4 days and say, "What did you think?" And he's going to say, "I have questions," or "It was great," or, there's numerous choices that he could say. It's my job to schedule another conversation with him
Sure.
to see what more help I could possibly be. I'm not an AI coach,
Yeah.
but it's giving him a taste of the knowledge base that's in here to advance his journey.
No, and I like your numbers too, because I think that
Mm.
the 100, reach out to 100,
Mm-hmm.
20 would be in have an interest in it. 2 say they want to think about it, and probably 1 buys. And 1 becomes it's like that. So that's like 1 in 100 as you break it
Yeah.
down too. And I was thinking as you said that too, it's our responsibility as coaches to reach out to them and to follow up and
Yeah.
provide more content, more value, and massive value, as somebody we know
Mhm.
says. And so it's kind of like I've been around people that have sold life insurance, and nobody calls ABC Insurance, "Hi, I'd like to buy some insurance." It just doesn't work that way. That's why there's
Right.
life insurance salespeople everywhere.
Right.
And Sue, do you know a friend? Then let me get a referral. It's your friend David. Let me talk to him about life insurance. It's funny. But I
Yeah.
think that it's just so interesting because you're trying, it's like the sales funnel. We've all heard that term, but that's really what it is. And you're trying to get down to
Yeah.
that person, and you never know, like those fishing poles in Lake Washington, you don't know which fishing pole is going to catch the fish. You just know you got to put 12, or in this case, 100 poles out there, and then down to 20, then the 2, and then the 1. There was, as I said, I know we got to get wrapping up here. I had a friend, I was like 6 or 7 years old, I forget, somewhere in there, maybe 8 years old. And I was selling seeds door to door. And
Seeds?
seeds, like, for the garden, like sunflower
Oh,
seeds and
okay.
strawberry seeds and vegetable and fruit seeds. And so I remember they sell for like a nickel, and I make like 2 cents for each one or something. I think I'm maybe 7 or 8. So
Sounds awful.
my mom says to me, well, you ought to get a friend to help you. You guys can sell more. So I thought, this is a good idea. So I get this friend, and he comes over, and I give him, 10 or 12 packs of seeds, and it was cucumbers and lettuce and, apples or whatever it was. And I gave him some nickels and some pennies that I kind of have for change, because I think they were nickels or something like this. So we walk outside I remember this course like yesterday. And so we walk outside, and I said, here, I don't even know what his name was. And I said, let me do this. I'll go down this side of the street. You go, have I told you this before? You go down that side of the street. So let's start, and we'll meet at the end and see how we did. So he says to me at 8 years old, he says, okay, but I have one question. I told you I'd do this for you, but on one condition. And I said, what's that? And he goes, you have to tell me which houses will buy. I said, well, how would I know that? I said, he takes the seeds and the money, throws it down. I'm not going to do it then, and storms off. How would I know which houses are going to buy? That's the whole point of this thing. You have to press each doorbell, and you go down the street, and eventually, but I don't get to know which fishing poles can have the fish on it. I just know if I have 100 poles out there, 20 will get a bite, and then 2 will say they're interested, and 1 will actually be the fish I catch.
Yeah.
Yeah. But
And
that
it's
to
the
me,
same with posting on social media. Like, I used to think when I first came into the online space, I'm going to post and somebody's going to click on it, go to my website, and sign up to work with me.
Exactly.
That's what I thought.
It's so true.
So silly.
Cracking ourselves
And
up here.
I really felt for a long time, I was like, why isn't this working? Oh, it must be the funnel, must be the website, must be the landing page. Oh, the button's wrong. Oh, this is wrong. Oh, well,
Such a
I've
good
fixed
point.
all of those things 100 times. And guess what?
Exactly.
That's not what sells anything over $3,000. It doesn't.
Exactly.
And
You're exactly correct.
I think when you're self-aware and you're curious, you can figure out how to write your content. And I do 4 different types of content based on those 4 different stages that people are at. Unaware of their problem, that's one type of content. Aware of the problem, just looking for information, that's informative content, educational content. Then aware of the problem, ready to do something about it, but not ready to hire me.
Yeah.
That's a different type of post.
Right.
That's more engaging. Oh, take this action, do these action steps. And then the last type of content is the content that explains how I work with people and what transformation they can understand and how to contact me.
Yeah.
And you have to have a mix of all of that.
Yeah. That's neat. That's neat. Well, I think we'll wrap up for this weekly edition of the Suzanne Taylor King and David George Brooke conversation. Any final thoughts around prospecting the perfect
I
customer?
do have one question about this. So what's possible for you if you really lean into better questions, better answers, and really being intentional about where you show up? That's what I'm working on. What does it look like for you
Well,
as
I think
far
that's a great question, kind of again, as we wrap. To me, it's better clients, better engagement, better results, and then income, because we're all measured by income. I still look at income and think it's never really changed from my report card in high school. Do you get A's and B's, or you get C's and D's? And I've always pretty much always an A student, occasionally a B, and not a 4.0, but kind of a B plus kind of a person. And that just is kind of your report card. And so
Yep.
I think it's really important. And I hope, but one of the big things I've gained from today is just really understanding prospecting, understanding the right questions. And then I would add, for me, this thing about listening. I mean, at the risk of sounding dramatic, I feel like listening, or more specifically, the lack of listening, is of an epidemic proportion in our country. It's just insane. How do you learn something? Larry King, the late great broadcaster, once said, they asked him about all the success, and he was quoted as saying, "You can't learn anything when you're talking." And of course, that means ask good questions and follow up. But how are you going to find and identify those people if you're not asking those powerful questions? And I love that. Purpose questions, past stories, present stories, and possibility questions was really good. So I hope that was helpful to everybody today. SDK, thank you so much as always.
Thank you.
Great to see you. I hope all of you out there in video land got some content, but thank you all. And we will see you next week rather, same time, same bat channel. Thanks,
I was
everybody.
just going to say that.
Thanks, everybody.